The salt-laced wind that whipped off the harbor was a brutal, damp cold that seeped into the bones and stayed there. In the fishing town of Portside, the autumn storms were a season of their own, a time when the sky and sea grumbled at each other in shades of iron and slate. Kalen, a young man of 19 with eyes older than his years, navigated the slick, cobbled streets with the weary focus of someone who knew the cost of a misstep. His worn boots splashed through puddles that reflected the dull, bruised sky. Slung over his shoulder was a leather satchel, heavy with the day's final deliveries, prescriptions for the elderly, legal documents for the town clerk, a rare book for the reclusive lighthouse keeper. Each envelope was a promise, each package a thread in the fragile tapestry of his survival. His phone, a cheap, prepaid thing, vibrated in his pocket. He didn't need to look to know it was a reminder from the courier service. Last run, Kalen. The lighthouse package is time-sensitive. He pays a premium for after-hours service. Don't mess this up. He was old Mr. Alistair Finch, who lived in the lighthouse on the jagged point south of town. A man known for his wealth, his eccentricity, and his impatience. Kalen's stomach clenched with a familiar, hollow dread. This job, this precarious independence he'd clawed for himself after aging out of the system, was everything. It paid for his rented room above the chandlery, a space so small he could touch both walls with his arms outstretched, but it was his. The four walls were his sanctuary. Lose this, and he'd be back to sleeping in the library's study carrels or, worse, the exposed bus shelter. He picked up his pace, the wind tearing at his thin jacket. The lighthouse was a 40-minute walk, and the light was already failing, the days shrinking with the approaching winter. As he reached the edge of town, where the paved road gave way to a gravel path that traced the cliff's edge, he saw her. A little girl, no more than 6 or 7, was sitting on a large, wave-smooth rock, her knees drawn to her chest. Her red coat was a stark, lonely splash of color against the gray world. She wasn't crying. She was just staring out at the churning, white-capped sea, her small shoulders hunched against the wind. Her hair, plastered to her cheeks by the mist, was the color of wet sand. Kalen slowed, his delivery time ticking like a bomb in his head. Keep walking, a voice inside him insisted, a voice shaped by hardship and disappointment. Your room depends on this. Your heat. Your food. She's probably just waiting for someone. But the path was deserted, and the light was bleeding from the sky. The tide was coming in. He could hear the hungry roar of the waves hitting the rocks below, closer than they had been minutes before. Hey, he called out, his voice rough from the cold. You okay? The girl turned. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and glassy with unshed tears. I can't find my dog, she whispered, her voice so small it was nearly swallowed by the wind. He ran after a seagull. I told him to stay, but he didn't listen. A dog. Of course. Kalen's gaze swept the barren, gorse-covered cliffs. No sign of any animal. His phone buzzed again. He ignored it, his jaw tight. The lighthouse was a faint, blinking pinprick in the distance. Mr. Finch was waiting. The premium pay for this delivery was his rent money. He'll come back, Kalen said, the words feeling hollow. You should go home. It's getting dark. My house is that way, she said, pointing a trembling finger further down the coast, in the opposite direction of the lighthouse. But I can't go without Barley. He'll be scared. Kalen looked from the girl's terrified face to the relentless path toward the lighthouse. He saw the future split into two diverging roads. One led to a secure delivery, a paid rent, another week of stability. The other led into the gathering dark, on a hopeless search for a dog that was likely long gone, and the almost certain loss of everything he had. He cursed under his breath, a short, sharp sound lost to the wind. He had spent his life being pragmatic. Pragmatism was the armor that kept you safe. But looking at this child, alone and brave, her loyalty to a lost creature overriding her own fear, his armor cracked. All right, he sighed, the fight going out of him. What does Barley look like? Her description was a child's. He's brown and white and his ears are floppy. And he has a really waggy tail. It was useless. But Kalen knelt, bringing himself to her eye level. The gravel bit into his knees. Okay. We'll look for him. But we have to be quick, and you have to stay right with me. Deal? She nodded, a flicker of hope lighting her eyes. He took her small, cold hand in his, and they turned their backs on the lighthouse. For the next half hour, they trudged through the tough coastal grass, Kalen calling out, "Barley!" into the wind, his voice sounding thin and foolish. The girl, whose name was Aaliyah, held his hand tightly, her trust a terrifying weight. The sky deepened from slate to charcoal. Kalen's phone buzzed incessantly, then fell silent. He knew what that meant. The delivery was missed. The job was gone. A coldness that had nothing to do with the weather settled in his gut. Just as he was about to suggest they turn back, to face the inevitable confrontation with her parents, a faint, whimpering sound reached them. It came from a crevice in the rocks, a narrow split hidden by bracken. Aaliyah gasped and pulled Kalen forward. There, wedged tightly, shivering and terrified, was a small, brown and white spaniel mix. "Barley!" Aaliyah cried, scrambling to reach him. Kalen had to carefully shift several rocks, his fingers going numb, to free the trembling animal. The moment Barley was loose, he launched himself into Aaliyah's arms, licking her face frantically. She laughed, a sound of pure, unburdened joy that seemed to momentarily quiet the wind itself. Kalen watched them, a strange ache in his chest. He had lost everything. But in this moment, holding on to the little girl's hand as she clutched her rescued dog, he felt a sense of purpose so sharp and clear it almost felt like gain. He walked Aaliyah home, to a small, neat cottage with smoke curling from its chimney. The door flew open before they reached it, and a woman with Aaliyah's eyes rushed out, her face etched with panic that melted into overwhelming relief. She scooped Aaliyah and the dog into a crushing embrace, weeping and scolding in the same breath. When she looked up at Kalen, her gratitude was a physical force. "Thank you," she breathed. "We were so worried." She must have wandered off. "Thank you?" Kalen just nodded, unable to form words. The woman invited him in, pressed him to stay for food, but he declined. The weight of his failure was too heavy. He mumbled a goodbye and turned back into the night, the image of the warm, lit cottage doorway burning behind his eyes. He didn't go to the courier office the next day to collect his termination. He couldn't bear it. Instead, he spent the morning packing his few belongings into his backpack. He was sitting on his bed, staring at the cracks in the opposite wall, when a firm knock echoed through the small space. He opened the door to find a tall, severe-looking man in a dark overcoat. He had the air of someone who handled important things. "Kalen?" the man asked. "Yes?" "Mr. Alistair Finch would like to see you." Kalen's heart sank. So, the old man was so furious he'd sent someone to track him down. "Look, about the delivery. I can explain. There was an emergency." "Indeed," the man said, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Finch is aware. He would like to discuss it with you in person. Now, if you're available." Defeated, Kalen shouldered his pack, expecting to be led to a police car or a lawyer's office. Instead, the man, who introduced himself as Mr. Sterling, led him to a sleek, silent car and drove him not to the town, but back toward the cliffs, to the very lighthouse he had failed to reach. The lighthouse was not what he expected. It was modernized, warm, and filled with books and strange, beautiful artifacts from across the globe. Alistair Finch was not a hunched, angry old man, but a vigorous figure in his 70s, with sharp, inquisitive eyes and a presence that filled the room. "You're the courier," Finch said, not as a question, but a statement. He gestured for Kalen to sit. "I was," Kalen replied, his voice low. "I'm sorry about your package. I know it was important." "The package was a first edition Moby Dick," Finch said, waving a dismissive hand. "I have 3 others. It was a test." Kalen looked up, confused. "A test?" "I had a camera on the cliff path," Finch explained calmly. "A security measure. I saw the whole thing. I saw you stop. I saw you turn away from your own security for a child and a dog you'd never met. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. Do you have any idea how rare that is? Most people are so focused on their own destination, they walk past every signpost of human decency along the way. You didn't. You chose the harder, nobler path. You sacrificed your own stability for it. Kalen was speechless. He just stared. I am a very wealthy man, Kalen, Finch continued. And my greatest project, my true legacy, is not my collection, but a foundation that seeks out and supports young people who demonstrate exceptional character. We provide scholarships, mentorship, housing. We invest in people who have proven they know there are things more important than profit. He stood and walked to the large window that looked out over the tumultuous sea. I am offering you a place in that program. Full tuition to the university of your choice, a living stipend, and an internship at the foundation. We need people like you. People who understand that our real wealth is measured not in what we have, but in what we are willing to give up for others. The room seemed to tilt. Kalen felt the solid ground of his despair give way to something impossible, something like hope. It was too much. It was. I don't know what to say, he stammered. Say yes, Mr. Finch said, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. Let your moment of failure become the foundation of your future. Let me repay the kindness you showed to a little girl on a cliff. The world needs more of that currency. Tears welled in Kalen's eyes, but this time, they were warm. He looked from Mr. Finch's earnest face to the wild, beautiful sea outside, the very sea that had almost been his undoing. He had set out to deliver a package and had lost everything. But in losing it, he had found something infinitely more valuable. Yes, he whispered, then stronger. Yes. In that single word, the lonely boy on the cliffs was gone, and a young man with a future stepped into the light. These stories of connection and consequence are meant to be shared. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments below. If you believe in the power of a single choice, subscribe to the channel. By hitting that notification bell, you choose to be part of our community, and you ensure that our next journey finds its way to you.